Hello, viewers. Crackpots, conspiracy theories, and bogus cryptography, and the Shakespeare Authorship Debate. So, this lady is very topical at the moment. Now, beyond self-preservation, a monarch's primary and overriding duty is to ensure the succession. Now, the most reliable way of doing that is to provide some offspring, but it would have been nice, Liz, if you'd let us know who you wanted to succeed you, and very famously she doesn't. And it's one of the unexplained parts of English and indeed British history. Now, regarding the transition of power, the obstruction and violent interference with the transfer of power on Capitol Hill, based on absolute bullshit to do with widespread voter fraud, was an attack on the linchpin of our civilization. This stuff is seriously dangerous, and it extends beyond the collapse of civilization, but that's certainly one of the things that we're in danger of with this kind of rubbish, policemen being chopped in half. So So yeah, we've got a bit of a problem, haven't we, with rubbish on the internet and crappy cryptography. Exhibit A, the Bible codes. So Whitson, Ripson, Rosenberg, in the 80s, initially, came up with this quite astonishingly. You reckon that they've found medieval rabbis in the Torah. Now, so quite surprisingly, Rich is actually a mathematician. He appears to be not entirely truthful, actually. So, but he has done some work on topology. But the other, rather disturbing thing is that these people, well, certainly Rips looks very pious, and I find it quite surprising that they'd be doing this with the Torah. Now, when what the method here is to take an essentially arbitrary block, a block of text, and strip white space and punctuation, set it in a grid, and then start looking for things. Now, the problem with this particular example, is that it's not patternful enough. But the main problem is there's insufficient grid usage. Well, the patterns are issue. That's these two shorter patterns, just only four. So the main problem is most of the page has got nothing in. Now, when you set plain text, normal text, in a grid, you will necessarily have an ideal distribution of Scrabble letters from which to find words. So it's the chances of you finding things in this are far higher than random letters, and it's very difficult to come up with a way of doing that, and working out what the stats are, other than writing computer programs to hunt through text, and I did a little bit of that, and I got exactly the same kind of results as the blokes that blew this apart got. This is complete rubbish. But the other reason that this is a problem, and certainly a lot of other stuff in this Bible codes category, is that they're predicting the future, and that's silly. If you've got something, predicting, the names of medieval Hebrew scholars, that's predicting the future, rabbis, then it's wrong, basically. So go find out why. Now, this is not an arbitrary piece of text. This is a specific 163 characters, and we have to use all of them in a grid. Now, the thing about this is that whilst it kind of looks a bit like normal text, it's not. It's not plain text. It's been mucked around with. There's all kinds of things wrong with it, and the main problem with it is that it doesn't actually make any sense. It's deeply suspicious for starters, but it's just these specific characters that we're bothered about. We're not hunting through the whole of Shakespeare, the whole of the King James Bible, and trying to find a block of text. We're trying to solve what is blatantly a problem. And even Stratfordian scholars admit that, well, this is a little bit odd, but maybe we'll never find out. Well, we have done, but this isn't it. So, with apologies to the guys who published this before what I'm about to show you was published, and, people shouldn't be dissuaded from having a go, but that, which is a Netherlist submission, is a load of rubbish because it's not patternful and there's insufficient grid usage and it's not even that good a message. Your poet, Mr. Sir Henry Living, and then there's some scholarly stuff about what hue means. But there's an interesting thing about the Polonius grid in here, but you don't have anywhere near enough. I think you've got two on there. Now this is the solution. This is set to grid width 19, and there are 19 letter T's in here. T is the 19th letter in the Latin alphabet, which is that sort of a function of it, but it is. They're markers to give you some comfort factor, but the main reason that it's 19 is because it works. And out of the 163 characters, we're using 112 of them. And there are 225 instances of letters being used. These are overlapped. It is utterly astonishing. And the components on this are patternful and pertinent. It's a plausible solution. So now I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's enormous, but I just want to give you the core message. To the Westminster South Transept St Peter's lies here de Vere. Where do you get that from? So this blue thing on the left is one of three not regular showstoppers. It's nevertheless connected. All the squares are adjacent to at least one other square, and it is a rough ground map of Westminster Abbey, and how you define a ground map of Westminster Abbey mathematically is a bit of a pain, so it makes it very difficult to work out numbers on that, and it's an anagram, and it's a large anagram, so that kind of hammers the numbers around. But okay, that's interesting, but maybe not interesting. Maybe just a face on Mars. It's the next one, which is truly divine, which this is a Petrine cross, St Peter's cross. And inside it says Isle, and that is how you spell, or you can spell Isle in 1600. You don't need an S and an A. And then underneath it says use, but if you transpose the Y and the S, and you put a dot above the Y to make it a th, then that says south. And I've got St Peter's Cross, Isle South, St Peter's Cross, Isle South, St Peter's Transept South, South Transept St Peter's. That's Poet's Corner, which is there. So that now is, we're on a poetry book, and we've managed to fish that out. And then next to it is this data great big letter I, which consists of, in the shape of the letter T, lies here, and then in the shape of another letter T underneath, de Vere. And in terms of putting de Vere in an upside down T, that's the only shape that you can make that will really works for an upside down T, and I would say that is the nicest way of doing it. You could put Vere the other way around, but then it wouldn't fit in with this. But then you'd end up with D, which should actually be a little bit confusing. We have got D written across here, but we don't want it getting in the way of our nice de Vere. That's just the niceness of it. Just that. So this is in the shape of a letter I, and you'll notice on the Geneva Bible, which is all in English, of course, apart from Jesus with a letter I. So this is, this letter I was considered by the Hermeticists as having sacred meaning, and it's certainly, it's got two lines of symmetry. Now that alone is pretty heavy, and you're going to have a lot of trouble finding anything quite like that. I would suggest, but we've hardly started. So as corroboration of that, we have three letter I's. Three I's is the number 3 in Roman, and 3 is a deeply religious number. Now on the left, this pink one. In the shape of the letter T, we've got an anagram of Elison. And across the bottom, we've got IH for an Ieta Christogram, Jesus Christos. So we've got Christe Elison, which is said at every Latin Mass, I understand. Christ have mercy. And we've got Vere lies here. And then this one, in the shape of the letter T, is Veritas. And underneath we have a Latin verb stem of ven, and you'll have to go to Latin scholars as to how scared we should be of a verb stem. But we've got Jesus, our letter I, veritas, venet, the truth is in Jesus. And these are 3 I's together. And just finding that, just finding any 3 shapes with something pertinent in, and 3 topologically, equivalent shapes, let's say, is going to be tricky, and it just goes on and on. This is a corroboration that all these have got ish on them. Now we can play around fairly easily with 3-character acronyms and work out what the chances are, but these are all nicely centered. You can't have the ish on the side. I mean, it don't make that much difference. It's just an example of the overlaying of what's going on, and they said this isle uses in exactly the same place as the Elison, and indeed there's repeated stuff over there. Now there are 3 showstoppers that aren't the T's, I's, or crosses, and this is one of them. I mean, it's a T, an I, and a cross. It's got 2 I's, and it's an anagram. But I just give you that for completeness. But this one is the only other thing. It's got Westminster Abbey, that dates a great big cross, and this. And what's nice about this, you see, is that Riothesley here is what I call premium vocabulary, because everybody thinks that Henry Riothesley has got something to do with the publication of this, and indeed a number of other publications. The first 2, I think, publications with the name Shakespeare on are dedicated to this guy explicitly. I make the chances of that turning up roughly 1 in 10 billion, and that's including allowing them to wrap over. Even though we allow this to be chopped up, arbitrarily in a couple of places. I think I allowed it in 3 places. I can't get this, sitting in diagonals or verticals, and to under 10 billion. You may disagree with that, but anybody with a feel for this realizes that hang on, we've got a lottery ticket here. You've got to work quite hard, and again, it's overlaid on top of what's already there. It's not like I found this, in a field somewhere of text, and then I need to go to the next page to find the next bit. This is slap bang right over what's already there, and there's way more. There's lots of stuff over here which I'm not going to bore you with. But as you can see, it's absolutely packed. 10 symmetrical T, I, or cross-shaped rabuses, 12 corroborating marks like that ish, Vere. Got 3 Veres on stuff. These 3 showstoppers consisting of 14, 17, and 21 characters, and pushing 70% of this page is being used. Really quite astonishing. Now, just to show you another example of this, we're taking a specific block of highly suspicious text. This is on the stone in Stratford, and the top couple of lines are in Latin, and then there's a space, and then this bit's in Latin as well. So I want that lot with these 4 T's that for some reason have turned up with 2 matching spelling mistakes at the end. If you the giveaway one is read if thou canst. What does that mean? But the rest of it it's not quite as bad as the previous one, but it's still pretty weird. We've got a German word here, and it's this stuff about spelling mistakes. I mean, okay, they've put an E on the end of D. They've done that in order that they can muck around with it, but I don't know whether or not the people happily did that. I guess they did. I have seen some pretty bad spelling, actually. But this, right, and the thing is, this is on stone. This isn't handwriting. It's not even movable type. Someone's, carefully drawn all this out in chalk to begin with before they've even started. There's lots of stuff in here which hasn't been cracked as yet. But the solution that we've got so far is this, where we've got a shape of a key at grid width 34, and see thou, Vere lives in Shakespeare, whose name he is, and then 3 T's. Now, in terms of this key symbol, I was looking for Freemasons and keys, and I found this book about Dan Brown's book about the Freemasons. I don't know why Dan Brown doesn't want to look at this. I don't know if you make it worse or better, but we've got the problem with this is that isn't too difficult to make happen in terms of trying to muck around with some text to do that. A bit of effort, anybody can do this, because you've got no pressure on this side, and there's not that much here. The only bit that's hard is making Vere happen, and that's not hard. But it's another example of this gridding of a specific block of text. Now, just to look at some other stuff that's on this, I'm not going to go through this, but I've done a lengthy presentation about the geometry that has been uncovered on here. Now, you end up with all this in total. All this is generated by those first 2 dots, believe it or not. And that previous page is just a composite of all this stuff. Now, these first 2 are Alan Green's discovery, and they consist of 3 triangles, which are very plausible. They're pi, Pythagoras, and phi. And then they go on to generate, via some construction lines, the two horizontal rules here, the I'm anonymous rules, and that's an astonishing discovery, and I have looked at that in some minute detail, and as I said, I've done an hour-long presentation on that. So all that stuff, in my opinion, is perfectly valid. The problem is that with Alan Green's presentation is that he's added these three extra triangles to fill all of this in, and he's got tangent values. So these three values here, e minus 1 and b2, are the tangents of each of these right angle triangles. Now, immediately, of course, anybody just looking at what B2 is and its history will understand that you can't have Brunn's constant in 1600 because it's physically impossible. It's the sum of the twin prime reciprocals, which Brunn proved converged, but the only way you can actually work out what that number is, what it converges to, is by adding it all up. And that's quite hard work. And we managed to break the Pentium processor in the process. Now, E and E minus 1 are interesting, partly because I actually made quite an effort to try and make those happen, because they're not quite as implausible as Brunn's constants. It turns out that on the front of Jos Burge's book in 1620, he's actually printed the antilog of 1, which is, of course, is E. And we know that Kepler must have had at least some of these numbers in order to do his publication in 1609 of his first and second laws of planetary motion, but also in the 16th century and now in the 17th century, the business of usury, of money lending and interest, and usury upon usury, compound interest. There's quite a lot of people looked at this. Simon Stevin in particular, who's perfectly capable of doing a thought experiment and finding out, if we charge you daily for 20 years, what do we get? Well, you get the same number that Napier and Burge were coming up with for the antilog of 1. But of course, they're not there. The reason I realised they weren't there is because I've got the nice 3 triangles and I only need 3. But then once you pull these out, the numbers click in, So once I gave up that fight, but it demonstrates that it's very difficult. Someone said to me, nobody's proved that these other numbers are pi and 345. Well, I don't know if we ever can prove that in that this number is B2 in particular very close to what where the end of this line is very close to where B2 is, but we know it can't be B2, right? So can you just draw lots of strange lines on here? Well, yeah, there you go. There's another one. Just because that is absolutely bonkers, and I shan't bother. There's so much of this stuff. This is the only thing of the geometry that someone's given me, but I have loads of crazy cryptography, much of it Oxfordian, which cannot be justified, and this thing is just mental. If you're looking for a star chart, which is what that previous thing was alleged to be, there's actually a stunningly simple one that's on there. This is the Rosicrucian Manifesto from 1618, and it's got the 2 supernovae of 1572, which we call Tycho's supernova, and 1604, the year of De Vere's death, which is known as Kepler's supernova. And these two have respectively declinations in the solar plane of respectfully 21 degrees and 63 degrees from actually 63 degrees for 1772 and 21 degrees for 1604. Well, it turns out, and you can do this experiment at home, right? If you draw a line from that dot, from the centre of that dot, so go and get the highest resolution you can find, which, as I'm aware, is from the Folger Lunar Collection. Thank you so much, Folger. Right? And you draw it up to this rather large aberration on this S, quite a square dot that's on the base of that S, right on its centre and right in the middle of the line on this here, and draw that and measure that angle. It's 1/50th of a degree off the 63 degrees, 63 from the horizontal. This one is measured from the vertical. And again, you draw this up through this notch that's on the base of the A, and go very nicely at the side of the A here, and you will get a value that is again 1/50th of a degree out, right? And this green line and this red line are also very, very close to integers. This one, I believe, is the 1577 comet. Unfortunately, nobody has ever bothered to translate Tycho Brahe's Latin account of this comet in order that we can work out what it exhibited in an occultation with, which I understand is what astronomers call kind of an eclipse. This comet has gone across the front of something, I would suggest. I know it's a comet on the grounds that I've got a comet-shaped thing here that it goes straight through, and I've got this integer degree going straight up to this very similar dot to that, right? But this one is bang in the middle, still on the centre line, but now actually on the centre line of all this as well, which again is remarkable. And the red line is exactly 23 degrees, which just turns out to be, again, the degree component. These people haven't got full stop, haven't got decimal points. The degrees, minutes and seconds are viewed as three separate numbers. So I'll just have the degree one, please. And then I'll draw an absolute degree line here. And that's the declination of the morning star, which is the brightest object in the sky. I've got the four most obvious things to pick. There's Horus is connected to Venus, and I've got some other reasons for believing that. So, this magic circle and all this other, these other shapes that I claim to have found up here may trouble you and may be a real bore to try and verify, actually, because you have to write a program yourself to be able to do that, or take mine and verify that, which is all hard work. This isn't hard work. This is trivial. You can do this at home straight away. Just fetch this and measure the angle between there and this dot, which you'd have wanted to just dismiss and say, well, this is just an aberration on the page. That's why it's such genius. Now, I just want to finish off with this because I think I might have found a tiny little thing on this, but this thing is absolutely delicious, truly scrumptious. It's and that's because it is both evidence, prima facie evidence for both the prosecution and the defence. In defence of Shakespeare, this sentence, and it's one of 2,500 comparisons which generally go as something, and then we've got the so something else. This is the only one that doesn't begin with S out of 2,500. Right? But it's a single sentence, and we've got Edward, Earl of Oxfordy, and Shakespeare in the same sentence. So these are clearly two different personalities. Oxford cannot be Shakespeare. Game over. Okay, so well, this is split across the page. I don't know many do that, but this one is for some reason. If we stick it back together again, we notice that Edward, Earl of Oxfordy, is on the very middle line out of 19. Now you can do something with 10 and 10 and IO, but don't worry about that just yet. But yeah, he's 17th point from the top and 17th from the bottom, and he was the 17th Earl of Oxford. Now, just looking at Shakespeare while we're here, all these names in red that are next to him, plus Gascoigne in green, which are close to him in the list. But these ones that are actually touching him, Lodge, this should be justified on each side. This is the only issue about it. Lodge is actually touching Shakespeare. John Lilly is, as is Nash, Hayward, and Mundy, and all these people just so happened to have been in the employ were servants of Edward, Earl of Oxfordy. Isn't that strange? Now Shakespeare's a big guy, obviously, and he obviously knows everybody, so we should need him nestled in with all his mates. But yeah, that's sort of odd. Gascoigne and Green are also closely associated with him, and I believe all of these people produced dedicatory works to the Earl of Oxford. Now, up to the semicolon, up to the first part of this, up to the so, we've got 40 words, and Earl is actually the 50th word out of 100. There's a subsequent 60 words. Now, if we put the as back, because so this is the only one that doesn't have as. Shakespeare at the bottom, that won't be changed. That's actually the 17th word from the bottom, which is the 34th word, 2 17s from Earl, which in turn, now we've put the as back, is not 50th but 51st word, which is 3 17s. So we really like 17. And so the 51st word out of 101 now. So let's just take these names. We've got 16 ancients, and we're going to compare those to 16 moderns, including the Earl of Oxford. But the Oxford seems to be kind of in the way here, doesn't he? He's the only aristocrat, and okay, he's paid for everything. But maybe he's not to do with this comparison. So let's kind of pull him out of the way. Now, if we look at this list now, with where Shakespeare is, if we count from the top, and we give Edward a 1, then Shakespeare is the 17th from the top, and also 17th from the bottom, and it's the 17th word from the end. So we've got 3 17s. Now, there's also this, right, so this is the real wonder. Each of these have a literary relation enforcing this ordering, and I'll discuss that a little bit in a moment. But the interesting one here is, who is Shakespeare lined up with? And it's this bloke called Aristonymus, which means aristocratic name. And the unique thing about Aristonymus in this list is he's the only one that we don't have any plays for. We know next to nothing about this guy. Not even sure if he's real. So that's strange. Now, if we just look again at this ordering on the right hand side, right, Oxfordy. This is Gauger of Oxford in the text, and it says Master Rowley and Master Edwards. Lilly, Lodge, Gascoigne, Green, Thomas Nash, Thomas Hayward, Hathaway, and Henry Chettle. So all of these apart from these four. Now, I don't know if anybody else had noticed that Wilson and Porter both have the same gematria, but they do. So they'll both, if you look up the letters of each of these in the Latin alphabet and add them together, they come to 92. And yes, that is something that they did. And what's really annoying me at the moment is I can't work out why the hell Chapman and Mundy, Anthony Mundy, our greatest Plautus plotter, maybe. Yeah, I can't solve that. Now, on the left-hand side, again, this is fairly trivial, Wikipedia-based research. If you look all these people up, and find out what they're classified as. Well, all these guys at the bottom, 6 of the guys at the bottom are Latin, right? But Terence is massively into Greek, and in fact, you can easily find out that Chapman is into Greek. So that's the only one of this list that's possible without reading what these guys have actually done. Right, but so I wanna lend Terence to the to my blue team. So yeah, there's 16 here, but if we take Aristonymus out, excuse me, there's 15, which is 3 times 5. So I've got this urge now because I'm Francis Mears to put those into 3 groups of 5. Mears does this repeatedly throughout the book, this kind of thing. So it's a reasonable thing to try and do. And yeah, it turns out that Aristophanes, Euclides, and these other 3 are all classified as old style Greek comedy. Alexis, Nicostratus, and Anaxandrides are all listed as middle, and Menander is new. So I'm going to have to define this as not old, and I'm going to throw Terence in here. He's obviously new, but he can go in that blue section. So I think that's reasonable. The other ones, with the exception of these 2, is unarguable. It's trivial. And yeah, we got Aristonymus with none of his works. Why is Shakespeare linked to Aristonymus? The aristocratic name and all these 17s. Now, maybe Shakespeare was actually part of Oxford's writing group, which consisted of, amongst others, Lily, Lodge, Gascoigne Green, Nash, Haywood, Mundy, and he's the unnamed one, that he was such a genius that none of them, felt was, he's a sacred person that they didn't even feel worthy of mentioning. But that's a bit of a kind of a crackpot theory, isn't it? So let's get on to crackpot theories and Shakespeare of Stratford. On the left is the complete and unabridged works of Will Shakespeare of Stratford. No, that's not normal. None of the other people, we've got handwriting for all of this lot. Everybody on here we've got evidence of. Nothing from this guy. No letters to him, no letters from him. Nobody ever refers to him as anything to do with the theatre, from Stratford. And there are very few contemporary printed references. Mears is to believe to be the first. There are actually remarkably few of those. So this is just, one of those things. Isn't it amazing how people can convince themselves of such an implausible story? You can't prove to me that this guy can write. His children can't write. Is any of this important? Well, what's important to me actually is nothing to do directly with that. It's 1609 and Johannes Kepler and the likes of him. In 1609, Kepler releases to the world his first and second laws of planetary motion. Now, this is, I would argue, is possibly the biggest thing ever in science, in that as far as the public are concerned, as in terms of its effect, and indeed its effect really on science. So you say, well, what about 1680 and 1905? Neither of those, Newton or Einstein, have immediate impact in the way most people have no clue what Newton's on about, and it's the same with Einstein. And certainly, as far as the general public are concerned, it's 30, 40 years before this will impact. This then, making out that we are no longer living in a geocentric world, we're now in a heliocentric world. People have already been burnt to death for suggesting that the sun might be a star and that the other stars have got planets and maybe people on them. And that's how big this is. It's in my view, it's equivalent to finding extraterrestrial life in terms of how much it changes the general public. But within science, Galileo and Bacon would go on to describe the scientific method. But what they're really saying is do it like Johannes did. Make yourself a mathematical model. And it's these people that are obsessed with mathematics being at the core of God's creation who establish our modern world. Now it's Napier, of course, that will produce the more accurate logs than Burgess, and this is William Oughtred, who I'm quite a fan of, and later in the next decade he would develop this, which is the slide rule, of course, which would essentially be, the pocket calculator, the pocket computer for the next 3.5 centuries. He also went on to write books in maths books in English, so I'm quite a fan of him. And so it's this, in the 17th century we're in peak witch burning season in the continent as a whole in the 1600s, and by the end of this century we've kind of stopped doing that kind of stuff, and it's the story of where these guys get up to. Now, is this important for anybody beyond? I think it's important for science history, in my opinion. Is this cryptography important in the Shakespeare Authorship Debate? I have to tell you, I really don't think it is, because the people in English lit, they're really not interested in it. It's beyond their interest. But also, there's this issue about getting involved in this kind of stuff and diluting the attack on QAnon. I'm not asking anybody to do that, but I will be sending this presentation to the guys that tore down the Bible codes, and I assure any readers that there is no mathematician or computer scientist on this planet that is going to be able to refute. And it will refute, actually. I don't think anybody's even going to want to get anywhere near this, because no way can produce anything like what's on that Cardano, and I'm not really sure how you're going to counter what we've got on the geometry. I don't really care. I would like somebody to play with on the geometry, because it is. I think it's quite an interesting discovery, but I have nobody to discuss this with at a technical level. But those two lines there mean anonymous, and you can kind of fill it in if you like. I'm going to do a small presentation on a few bits and bobs that I've got on here, so that you don't have to watch the whole of my previous presentation. I've done an hour-long presentation on this geometry, But yeah, that's it for now. More news if and when I ever get a proper version, and I need a much higher resolution version of this now in order to investigate some of the minutiae on here, which I invite you to look at my previous presentation on that about more news maybe. Thank you very much.